Nobody can pick him up.
I guess not.
I guess not.
That's too bad.
Right?
It was very nice. And all different kinds of art, medium and stuff they teach the kids.
Probably took a photo too much.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight is a Friday night, so if you did not get a parking permit, you don't need a parking permit. So it's just something, again, that you need to remember that on Fridays after 4 o'clock, Saturdays and Sundays at Fresno State is free parking in the regular areas, never in the handicapped unless you have a permit. But just again, to remind you about that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our upcoming events that you see over here. So coming up in the month of October, our next event in 2 weeks is going to be the special showing of the movie called Echoes of Kef Time. This was directed by Avo Kamburian, who's from USC. This was his graduate project, and it is going to chronicle, it's about a 35-minute documentary, and it'll be on the Hagopian family, that is on Richard Hagopian and his two grandsons, Philip and Andrew. And the director will be here, which is really always the exciting part, because then you get to really interact with the director, ask questions to see what's going on with it. So that's going to be on October the 27th. That's a Friday night right here at the same location. So make sure you tell people about that. And again, if you want to know about our upcoming events, we're always on Facebook, on various forms of social media. Then on Thursday, November the 9th, I'm going to be giving a talk here again at this location on Armenian art. So I've done this a few times in the past, and the Armenian art that I'll be talking about will be the manuscript tradition. So we'll be looking at Armenian manuscripts and the history of Armenian manuscript production as it relates to Armenian Christian tradition. That will be a talk that I'll be giving on Thursday, November the 9th. And then on Saturday, November the 11th, will be a virtual presentation, not an in-person presentation. It's about our latest book that's been published by the Armenian Studies program, which is called In Front of the Eyes of the World, The Memoirs of Setrak Temurian. Setrak Temurian was born in Kayseri in Old Armenia. He went through the Armenian massacres, and then he ended up in the United States and actually ended up in Fresno, California. It's a very interesting arc of his history. It is one of the most interesting memoirs that have been recently translated. It was originally in what is called Armenian Turkish, so it's Turkish, Armeno-Turkish, Armenian letters in Turkish. So somebody translated it, N. İpek Hüner from Turkey translated it from that into Turkish, the Armenian letters into the Turkish, and then Vahe Taşyan and Yaşar Tolga Jora are also editors. Vahe Taşyan is the director of Hushamadyan. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Hushamadyan project. He lives in Germany. Yaşar Tolga Jora is in Turkey. So that's why we're doing it virtually, obviously, because we have people in different locations. But we intend to talk about the significance of this new publication. We have it on sale, and we'll be starting to publicize it. We haven't really publicized it. It's number 19 in the Armenian series here at Fresno State. And that will be on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. That's because of the time difference. It's 10 hours ahead in Turkey, so we're giving them the opportunity to do that. Well, I want to just switch to our other PowerPoint, and then we'll start. And I'm also going to lower the lights a little bit. And in fact, once I begin, I'm going to kind of lower the lights completely because I just feel there's a better view of what's happening in the slides. I don't usually like to do that, but I think it's going to be better for us today. So this evening, the purpose of this evening's presentation is to give you, in a sense, a report and reflections on what we call the Armenia Summer Study Program, which was the first trip took place in 1988. So the picture that we have here is of our group in front of Khorvirab. Unfortunately, the day we were there, not much was being shown. Let me just lower the lights, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. I think you get a better picture of the images from this. Tonight's it's going to be also special because I'm just going to give you an overview of kind of the things that we were doing on our trip. But at the end of our presentation, I'm going to have 6 of our students each give something about their own impressions. And I've asked them to give us 1 or 2 photographs, and then they're going to talk about that. So I think that's really the most important part of what's going to happen tonight. But I do want to show you a little bit about what we've done. Now, this image was taken in front of the American University of Armenia. That's our bulldog flags that we were given by our study abroad program. And I want to thank tonight the Leon S. Peters Foundation and the Division of Continuing and Global Education, because they provided grants to the students to make it substantially a cheaper program, less expensive program than it would have otherwise. And that is in the amount of $1,000 each from the Leon S. Peters program foundation, and then the IRA program, which comes from student fees, was another $1,000. So it was $2,000 less expensive for students because they went through the program, and I want to thank both of those institutions. So 10th annual program. So it's hard to believe, but the first one was in 1988, which makes it 35 years this year that I've been leading these programs. And we've gone 10 times, as you see. And I just added up the students, and it was 107 students who have gone on these programs over a period of 35 years. This is from 1990. 1990. So in 1990, our group was really a very small group. There were only about 5 of us. And we ended up at the end of our trip in Moscow. Of course, today you cannot go to Moscow to travel to Armenia, but we were fortunate enough to be able to go to Moscow. This is the Kremlin area right here. It's got the body of Lenin, which is out here, the tomb of Lenin, which people go and see. So it's really the headquarters of what's happening. We were also fortunate enough to meet with the late His Holiness Vasken I. Vasken I was Catholicos in Holy Echmiadzin from 1955 until 1994. He's one of the most revered figures in Armenian church history. A very fatherly figure. You look at him, but he had to keep the church going in communist times. How difficult that must have been for him. And we were able to, fortunately, visit with him. And that's kind of the experience that we have in every group that we go. We try to do something that, maybe we didn't do a different trip, or do something that's a little different. In 2018, we actually had a 30th anniversary reunion. So this is a group of our students that had traveled over this period of the last 30 years. And someone asked, are we going to do another one soon? And I said, no, we'll have to wait another 30 years to do that reunion. But it was really a fun event. So I always like to start by kind of giving you the background of why we want to do such trips. There's no other Armenian Studies program that does a trip like ours. There's no other one that I know of that actually runs a program through the Armenian Studies program. Michigan used to do that, University of Michigan, but they stopped maybe 20 years ago. So ours is the only one that is still doing it. So what does it do? It provides an opportunity for students to experience Armenia firsthand. I mean, it's true about anything in life. Unless you experience it firsthand, it's not the same. So you can learn about something in classes, the second point, right? I can teach you, I can show you, but then when you go, see it, touch it, feel it, you smell what's going on, all the senses are engaged. And that's really what we want to do when we take our students. And then again, students see and feel Armenian history and culture. So it immerses you in a totally Armenian environment in a way which I think the only other place maybe today you could do that would be in Lebanon. A completely Armenian environment. So Armenia and Lebanon, but Armenia is why we are going there. So here was our group on May 23rd. Very excited to go. We were going via Paris. This is the first time in a long time that I've gone through Paris. Typically we've gone through Moscow. Once or twice we've done it through London. But now, again, it's impossible to travel through Moscow, so our flight was from Los Angeles to Paris, about 10.5 hours, about a 2-hour layover, and then approximately 4.5-hour flight to Yerevan. What I also like about this flight is that it gets you into Yerevan about 9 p.m. in the evening, rather than something like 3:30 in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning on many of the other flights. So our trip was filled with visiting different monuments. This is the Armenian Church of St. John in the village of Mastara, a very old 6th century, 7th century Armenian church. Again, you can just see the monumentality of the church, right? It really gives you a feel for the history of the Armenians who have lived on this land and have built not only churches but other monuments as well. And then we also visited the temple at Zvartnots. Zvartnots is one of the was one of the most beautiful Armenian churches because it was a circular planned church. And then a massive earthquake damaged it, many earthquakes. All that's left of it is behind us, but again, we had a chance to explore. There's a museum next to it, but also just the architecture of the Armenians. Now I want to just kind of tell you a little bit about Yerevan and where we were established. The red circle is actually something which is called the Green Belt in Armenia. So the city of Yerevan was specifically planned to have a circular green belt. So if you start here, any place, and walk, you could walk around the entire city in a green area, grass and trees. Which means then this is the Gentron, which is the center. And the two central areas are the Freedom Square and Republic Square. Republic Square is the government headquarters, all the government buildings. Freedom Square was the 1988 Artsakh movement, Karabakh movement started it there, and then Armenia's independence in 1991 really was started in that area. So we stayed in the heart of that central area, right here on Sayat Nova Street, at the Ani Plaza Hotel. Ani Plaza Hotel is a convenient hotel. It's within walking distance of many, many places, and for students, you can walk out at night and you're kind of in the middle of the nightlife of Yerevan, so you don't have to take a taxi or really walk around too far to be able to do that. We stayed, I believe, what was it, the 5th floor, 6th floor, 8th floor of this hotel. Mornings were kind of fun because it was our chance to kind of meet each other between, let's say, 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, 7 o'clock to have our breakfast, a wonderful buffet breakfast, talk about what we did the day before, and then plan ahead for what's happening. Right around the corner, this is our little shop. It's called Eureka Supermarket. It's also the money exchange. So in Armenia, you need to bring basically cash with you. Some places use credit cards, but not a lot. So you use cash, and as you can see, it says exchange. And I think some of the ladies here that are going to speak, they can talk to you about some of the experiences they had with the exchange man. There's a little booth right behind here. You enter, and there's a little booth, and you just kind of put the money under the window, and then he gives you the Armenian change. But he wants perfect bills, perfect dollar bills and $50 bills and 20s and whatever. One day, one of our students came to me. They said, we tried to exchange it. He wouldn't exchange it. I don't know, what was it? The edge was folded slightly, or some writing on it, something. Yeah. So I said, okay, let's go. And I just went up, gave it to him, and he just gave me the money. So I think he just didn't like, I don't know, something he had for the ladies, right? I think that's what it turned out to be. Now, many things in Armenia are connected to Fresno, and the statue of it's not David of Sassoon, the statue of William Saroyan, which is in a very important crossroads in central Yerevan, was erected in 2008 on the 100th anniversary of his birth by David Yerevanci. It's a source of a lot of conversation. You probably all have different opinions of it. What do you think of it, right? Do you think it looks like him? It's in a different style and all of these things. But as we walked through Yerevan the first day, we were able to come across all of these places. The summer study program combined day trips outside of Yerevan with activities inside the city, including visits to museums, historic sites, churches. We are on what is called the Cascade, or Cascade in Armenian. The Cascade is a series of steps which takes you from the central Yerevan, back here, up to the top area of the city, which is called the monument area. In Armenian, they call it monument. It is the upper area of the city. And the intent of the Cascade was to provide a path for people to walk all the way up those stairs. But the idea was actually to have elevators, but it's never been built, not outside at least. And so it gives you a great view if you can see Mount Ararat. You cannot see it very well on this day. We only saw it a couple of times on our trip. So this is some of the places that we visited. Mesrop Mashdod's Matenataran, I'll be showing you some of that. The Sardarabad Memorial and Museum, the Bulgarian Carpet Factory Tour, American University of Armenia, the Genocide Museum Institute, our Brandy Museum, Tumo Center for Creative Activities, and Yerevan State University. This is only a partial list of what we did. So typically, it would be one day of travel outside the city with a bus going to different places, and then the next day would be a city meeting places or going places within the city. One of the favorite places I think for all of our students and also for myself is the very well-known fortress and church at a place called Amb Bert. Amb in Armenian means cloud, Bert means fortress. It's a 12th, 13th century Armenian fortress. The church is a little bit further in this direction. It's a beautiful area, probably about 8,000 feet high, so you get a very good panorama of the entire Ararat Valley. And it's, again, kind of amazing to think about, we think about all of the tragedies or things that Armenia has gone through. The Mongols came to this monument and took this fortress over in the 13th century. So again, it's been a crossroads for a variety of groups, but here's our group here. And then we went to the Mesrop Mashdod's Madenataran. So the Mesrop Mashdod's Madenataran is the manuscript library, which holds approximately 13,000 Armenian manuscripts. And we got a special tour because I have a long-term relationship with the Madenataran in terms of work and other things that I'm involved with projects. And I think one of the fun things we did was we had an art class. So the lady back here, she actually does this for children and young people. So you get to learn how to decorate. Yeah, we're young people. It's okay. We learn how to decorate these bookmarks, but with Armenian letters. So you know that one of the interesting things about Armenian manuscript decoration or painting is that the letters can be in the shapes of birds and flowers and other kinds of plants. So she gave us some models, and we spent some time doing that. It was really a fun afternoon because we spent a couple of hours doing that, and just kind of gave us an idea of the beauty of these Armenian manuscripts. We also got to visit a special area, which is the area where they restore the manuscripts. So when a manuscript is donated to the Madenataran, first they look at it, they review it, look at it, because sometimes manuscripts can be moldy, they can have other kinds of problems, and what they do is they clear out all the mold, they repair pages, and we got to see that process, and that was a special moment as well. Then we decided one day, I decided we were going to go to the area of Ashtarag, and we went to a very interesting restaurant, and I wonder if anybody could figure this out. It says Arze Lebanese Cafe by Pascal and Diodato. Would anybody here happen to know? If you know this, you really, really know your Armenian history. I didn't really remember it until I was reminded, but I did know it. Pascal and Diodato. There's two people. No one? Pascal and Diodato were the first people to bring coffee to Europe. They're Armenians who brought the coffee trade, coffee houses. People in Europe did not drink coffee. The Armenians were the first people to bring coffee to Europe, and the names are Pascal and Diodato. And it's this restaurant which I was always wanting to visit, so I decided we're just going to go and visit it. It turned out that the owners of it were also the owners of the Gourmet Dourmet chocolate factory. And that was right next to the place, Gourmet Dourmet chocolate factory. And this is one of the brothers that owns it. They're originally from Lebanon, but now living in Armenia. This is a very well-known chocolate brand in Armenia, and now it's being distributed all over the world, including in the United States. Gourmet Dourmet chocolate. And we got a tour of the chocolate factory and a little bit of the history of chocolate making in Armenia. So the next few slides I'm going to show you is kind of to show you the different areas of Armenia that we explored. So what I'd like to do is to visit every sort of region, I call it. And that means that we take trips to the north, to the northeast, then to the south, into this region, and then also to the west in this region. So on this day, our trip was to go to Gyumri. And I can say, and I think the students will agree, that this was one of our most interesting days because we did so many things. We visited ruins of Armenian settlements from 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. And then we went to Gyumri and we visited the Church of the Holy Savior. This is an exact model of the Cathedral of Ani in the city of Ani. This church was completely destroyed in the 1988 earthquake, completely destroyed down to the ground. It had not been used as a church in communist times because the communists had closed the churches, but it's now been completely renovated, and in front of it is an Armenian genocide monument. So this is the center of the heart of Gyumri. Gyumri was the second largest city in Armenia, a population of 250,000. As a result of the 1988 earthquake, it's lost half of its population, and today it's probably the third or fourth largest city. But it is enjoying somewhat of a revival. Our host was Haik Demoyan. Some of you know him. Haik Demoyan was the former director of the Armenian Genocide Institute, and he accompanied us on our trip to Gyumri. And in Gyumri, he is renovating old homes, buildings, and now making them into museums. And one of the museums, we went to 3 of his museums, or 2 of his museums. One was dedicated to the history of Armenian women, and another was dedicated to Armenian film. So when you go to Gyumri, it's a really nice walking city, and now they have these beautiful museums that are now popping up throughout the city. So we had the opportunity to visit in that area as well. Then another area that we went to was the area of Dilijan, Lake Sevan, and then Havartsin Monastery, which is again to the north and to the east. Oh boy, they you know, everybody, I opened my mouth and I said, you know, we usually pick up, you know, obsidian, you know, along the road here. And then our bus driver was just driving along and I couldn't get him to stop. And then finally I knew it was like the last stop. That we're able to get him to stop, and then everybody picked up. I think Jonathan, you must have gotten, you and Michael must have gotten I think they had maybe 40 pounds of obsidian that they collected. I don't know how did you get it back, all of it, or most?
No, I left some in the hotel room.
You left some in the hotel room for the people, yeah, in the hotel room. The obsidian, of course, is the volcanic glass, and so when you're traveling to Lake Sevan, there's mountainsides literally covered with that volcanic glass. And it's used in the vernissage, the area for shopping. You can make souvenirs out of it and other kinds of things. But we had a nice stop collecting some of the obsidian. Then we visited the monastery of Havartsin, which has been again completely renovated. This is again a 12th to 13th century series of churches. We visit a lot of churches. I do that for a couple of reasons. One, it shows us the history, but it also gets us into the various regions of Armenia, so it gives us a chance to visit all of those places. And then, of course, Lake Sevan, which we had quite a bit of difficulty getting to Lake Sevan. We had problems with our buses. We had some breakdowns with our buses on traveling to places, and then one time we came to Lake Sevan, and we were told we can't go any further because government officials had chosen that day to kind of have a visit, and they had closed the island, and we would have had to walk maybe 2 miles to do it on foot. I said, that's okay, we'll come back again. And we fortunately were able to come back and visit Lake Sevan, which is today the only freshwater lake in Armenia, the largest lake, used for drinking water and for hydroelectricity. Now, we went to the southern part of Armenia, to the Sunnik region, so everything here is considered to be Sunnik. Of course, with what's happening in Artsakh and the forced deportation of the Armenians, Goris today has become an important center for resettlement. We didn't see any of that, of course, because we're there in May and in June. But we visited, of course, Khorvirab, which is kind of mandatory because, again, it's the history, it's the prison where St. Gregory was imprisoned. In the background on a clear day would be Mount Ararat. Not again for us, but again, we did see it sort of toward the end of our trip. So one of the other places we visit is a place called the Armenia Winery. So Armenia is actually the name of a sort of wine, like we have Thompsons and Muscats. It's a particular variety of wine, which is actually one of the oldest wine varieties in the world. And the Armenia district is in the southern part of Armenia, and there's a lot of wineries around it. The owners of this winery had visited Fresno State back in the late 1990s because they were learning about winemaking, and then they started their own winery. So I always visit with them. They're always happy to see us. We had some delicious wine. They gave us a wine tasting of white wines, red wines, and then wines with fruit, pomegranate, peach. I don't know what else did we have, and then even some ohi, right? Some of the stronger stuff that they had, but it was a very interesting trip. But then the historical part was this very well-known cave called, it's the first time that I've been able to visit it, called Armenia 1. It's a place where archaeologists, you walk up here and then you go into this area. They discovered caves which have been inhabited for 6,000 years. 6,000 years. And among them is the world's oldest winery. So these are wine vases or made out of clay, which the wine was held in, and they are found in that cave. It's a very, very interesting, I use the word interesting, but this was really quite interesting walk around. We also saw the area where they discovered the world's oldest shoe. The world's oldest shoe is now displayed in the museum in Armenia, in Yerevan, but soon it will be coming back to its original place. So this is kind of the history part that we also get to see with all of the places that we visited. And then we also got to see the famous waterfalls at Chermug. Chermug is the resort city of Armenia. It has natural hot springs. In the Soviet period, it had hotels where if you worked in a certain factory, you got to have 1 or 2 weeks a year to go to the hot springs as your vacation. Soviet astronauts used to come from Moscow to spend their vacations here in the Soviet period. Today it's still a cooler area, and then some waterfalls. So Darlene, I won't tell you, but I told Jonathan like 15 times, just be careful because it's very slippery over here. So I didn't want anybody to fall into the water, but thank goodness nobody did. But really it's kind of a dangerous place because of the water that's coming, but it's a very beautiful area. Then we also visited, of course, St. Hripsime and Holy Echmiadzin on the first Sunday that we were there. St. Hripsime, the famous 7th century Armenian church. But then we got to visit Holy Echmiadzin, and Holy Echmiadzin has been under a renovation for the last 7 years. So for 7 years, our groups have not been able to, no one's been able to go inside. For those of you that have been there before that, you know that there used to be a lot of trees, but they're renovating it still. They're redoing all of the outside areas. So we were able to walk to the outside. It's a 4th century Armenian church, the oldest Armenian church in the world. But then we were able to have a special audience with His Holiness Kadakim II, who gave us time. We spent maybe an hour with him, and he discussed what was happening in Armenia. We had a chance, the students had a chance to interact with him. We went to this special room in the back. You see the famous painting by Khanjan, which has also been made into a carpet. It's showing all of the famous scenes from Armenian history, Vartanants, and then it also has pictures of contemporary Armenians, including Saroyan, Aram Khachadurian, and otherwise. So this was a special day. We got to visit some of the museums. One of the most moving moments was when we got to visit 2 khachkars, which had been saved from Dativang. Dativang is the monastery in Artsakh. And when the 2020 war took place, the Azeris surrounded it, but the Russian peacekeepers kept it safe temporarily. But the Armenians were able to take the 2 khachkars and save them by bringing them to Holy Echmiadzin, and we were able to see that. And so thank goodness they were able to do that, because today we don't know what's going to happen in that area. We also visited the northern area, which is a very different, so each of these are very different climatically. Like it's like totally, you're in a totally different country. This is the most forested and the greenest area. Areas of Hakhbat, Sanahin, and Odzun. Again, one of our favorite spots is the Odzun Monastery, 6th to 7th century Armenian monastery, which has many historical parts to it, a lot of beautiful art. Also this monument, which is well known because these obelisks, an obelisk is a four-sided carved stone, is carved with a history of Armenian Christianity. And they have been preserved since the 6th to 7th century. So it's an important artistic work as well as a historical work that we visited. But when we went from Odzun, we were returning to Yerevan, was probably my favorite area that we visited as far as just the natural climate. You can see it's just a very green, beautiful area with river valleys, gorges, small villages we traveled to. We were going back from Odzun in the northern part down to Yerevan, and we were able to visit this area as we were traveling. We also saw a really nice rainbow. Didn't include that, but it was a beautiful rainbow in this area. We also visited the monastery of Sanahin, and again, these churches are just dotting the countryside, and we were able to visit with this khachkar to see the khachkar of Sanahin, one of the famous ones at this area, and then it's with Sanahin and Hakhpat, which are two areas which are close by each other. Then we visited, everybody pretty much visits these two areas, Garni and Gerhard. This is really, just to go back, is in central Armenia, right here, just about a 40-minute ride from Yerevan. And you get to visit a 1st century AD Greek-style temple, which was destroyed by an earthquake in 1674, but then was rebuilt in the Soviet period. And then next to it are ruins of a church, and then there's a deep river gorge, which you'll see a little bit later, and one of the students will be talking about it. And there are historical Roman baths, which the king had built. The Emperor Nero, the famous Emperor Nero, had fought a war with the Armenians, and then afterwards he sent money to help rebuild the city and help to rebuild this temple. And then these are two pictures of Gerhard. The monastery of Gerhard is the home to the spear which pierced the side of Jesus Christ. It's a well-known Armenian monastery, famous because it's built out of the side of the mountain. So when you enter this part of the church and make a left turn, you actually enter into a complete mountain, meaning that the chamber you're in is completely a mountain. It's not anything built by hand. And it is well known that the spear which pierced Christ's side was kept here. That's why it's called Gerhard. It used to be called Aidivang, but today it's Gerhard. That spear today is in the museum at Holy Etchmiadzin. One of the other areas we went to was the Mugrdechian carpet factory. Mugrdechian carpet factory is well known, established several years ago over 100 years ago in New York, but they came back to Armenia. And today you can get a tour of the museum, and then we also had a really interesting dinner there. So first you see that the natural materials and dyes which are used to make Armenian carpets. We saw the carpet making process. These ladies are actually making these very large carpets, which could take you weeks and months to make. And then the showroom for the carpets. And some of the students will be talking about some of the older carpets which are kept here at the museum. And then we had a really nice dinner here in a very traditional area. I don't know, I forgot the name of it. Does anyone remember the name of the actual dish that we had? So they designed the dish. It was intended to look like Mount Ararat, which was the meat, and then they had sauce, which was the Arax River, and then they had pilav, which was the Ararat River Valley. But that was the dish. And then it was one of our favorite meals, I think. I think many people said that they liked the meal. I even was able to take Eddie some leftovers afterwards, and he liked it a lot, right, Eddie? Yeah. He wasn't feeling that well, he didn't come, but we were able to take some food back. But if you look at just look at the decor, it really gives you the idea of really being in an Armenian place, right? So that's kind of what's interesting about it. We also were able to visit the American University of Armenia, which was founded in 1991. It's today affiliated with the University of California, but the Kashian Family Foundation in Fresno gives an annual donation to help support Fresno State students who wish to study for a semester without cost, totally free. airfare, tuition, housing. You can go study in Armenia one semester or even over a summer. This is this is the library building. This is our group. And then, actually that was an older picture. And then this one, the man in the middle is Dr. Hurab Papazian, who was our visiting professor just about a year and a half ago. And now he's teaching at the American University. And he gave us a presentation about the current situation in Armenia and Artsakh. Very interesting things that he presented. He's an anthropologist, but also a historian, and he's teaching now at American University. So I try to mix up, when I say mix up, I try to introduce interactions with other students, but also with faculty, so we think about some of the issues that are facing us in Armenia. Now, this is something new that probably no one here has been to, unless you've been to Armenia just recently. In Armenia, this is the statue which was erected in honor of the Nemesis Project. The Nemesis Project was the project to assassinate the people responsible for the Armenian genocide. Talat Pasha, 1921, and others. That's called Nemesis. And here are the names of the Armenians who were involved in that. This is a monument next to the university, very close to the university. When this was built, Turkey protested. So Turkey's got its nose in, Armenia's business and trying to, tell us what we should be doing in our country. But this monument is in this area. Then we got to visit what I found to be, again, something that I hadn't really done in detail, was to visit the National Library of Armenia. And this is a very beautiful mural that you see here. It is the National Library. It would be like the Library of Congress would be for America. We got to visit a historic museum, which showed us about the history of printing. And then we met with the director, Dr. Anna Chulian. She's the director of the National Library. And Armenian Studies program is involved in doing some projects with the National Library. So we share information about books. If there's something that we have that is extra and they don't have it, we're going to send it to them. Vice versa, maybe there's something there. So we try to keep active. Nerses Harapetian is also a librarian and has been important in this field. Then the final area that we'll look at is just Fresno-Armenia connections, which I kind of started with when we looked at William Saroyan, but there's actually other things that are kind of connecting us. One is the Merhuis Project, a second is the Armenian Genocide Monument and Memorial Grove, and the third is the Saroyan House Museum Project, and again, David Asasun. So every group that I've taken in the past 12 years, since 11 years, since 2012, we visited what's called the Merhuis Project, or program, which incorporates 20 young women and girls from ages 8, this is Susie, she's only 8 years old, to girls, young ladies that are 17, 18 years old. And what the program does is to give them a home, first of all. They come from disadvantaged families who cannot afford to take care of them. So our program houses them. We give them special education more than regular school because we give them language, foreign language, art classes, everything else that we can do. And then they stay there and they get, they learn how to be, very different than what they came to, because some of the orphanages in Armenia are not in great shape, but our program here, I'm involved in the program. So we take our students to interact with those students. I think it's kind of a fun thing. They were playing, I don't know, volleyball, I guess, a form of volleyball. We got to play with their dog, Jacko. Jacko is the dog that lives kind of in this area. But we sat down many times, a couple times that we visited. Some of our students were performing. Jonathan played guitar for them. And then their girls all have artistic talents. So they were singing, dancing. It's just a way for us to really see one other aspect of Armenia. And then we went to the Armenian Genocide Monument and Museum, Tizernaga Pert. And we had a tour of the area with Dr. Hartun Marutian, who's the director of the museum and institute. So all of you are familiar with the monument. This is the Armenian Genocide Monument. But there is also the museum and institute, which does very important work. And this is Dr. Adita Ghazalian, She's here. She's the director of the academic part of the museum. And so she talked to us a little bit about what they are doing in the museum. They're producing books. They publish books on the genocide. They do a lot of work in keeping the memory of the genocide alive, but doing the scholarly work as well. Very important in the world today. In 2011, our group to Armenia planted a tree. That tree was part of what is called the Armenian Genocide Memorial Grove. Every tree in that grove is named for a person or a country that visits. Like if you're a high-ranking person, a prime minister, a president, you visit the grove, you get to plant a tree, and then it's there. In 2011, they allowed the Armenian Studies program and our students to have a tree, which is just unheard of because no other group has that. And this is how it looked in 2011, and this is how it looks today. It's this big tree. So for us, for anybody that visits, go to this monument. There's a place that tells you where everything is at. It's a plaque. You can just look for the Armenian Studies tree, Armenian Students tree, and here it is. And it's grown now, of course, in 11 years to be a huge tree, but I think of it as a place where we've kind of left a part of ourselves, right? So we have a foot both in Armenia and in America. That's kind of the purpose behind what we're doing with the trip. David of Sassoon, we've talked about. We have the David of Sassoon monument in Armenia, and we also have it in Fresno. And then these are just, you can read it, I'm not going to read these. I always have my students, the students when they return write their own reflections. So it's always fascinating because it's their own look at what happened. It's their summing up in their own minds. They also had to write a daily journal, which is also interesting because it reflects their, on-the-spot memories of what was happening. Sometimes you forget, right? Especially when you're traveling, you could forget what you did yesterday, but we spend time, I have them write so that it's embedded in them, what they did. Afterwards, I give them that as well. But I think each student has been really impacted, and today I'm gonna end here in just a moment, and we're gonna have our students speak about their impact. That is what happened in Armenia. So. Thank you. That's my portion of the program today. I'm going to turn up the lights a little bit so that you can see. So we have 6 students that are going to be speaking. 2 of the students will just be speaking. A couple of them have, the rest of them will have slides. So I'm going to introduce each of them and then ask them to come up. And students, you can just tell me when you want me to advance the slide. I have the controls over here, and then I'm going to play with the lights as well. But we're going to start out with Karina Tokadyan. I want to introduce Karina first. Karina is an English major. She graduated from Fresno State in December of 2022, and she's currently enrolled at Fresno State, and she's pursuing a credential in English education. So Karina, come on up. Welcome.
Hi everyone. So this was one picture that was a takeaway for me. I was really shocked. So one thing our tour guide said that I thought was really interesting is he mentioned how, is that a little better? Yeah. Okay. He mentioned how basically the genocide monument is parallel to Mount Ararat, and I thought that was interesting because it was one takeaway for me that there's a parallel between Noah's Ark, right, and Ararat, and the story of genocide that happened, which is parallel to our own story, but also there's a story of survivors in both stories. And so that was one thing that stuck out to me that I thought was really interesting. And so this was another takeaway for me. So it was a takeaway because one thing I noticed throughout while I was in Armenia is this idea that stories are materialized in objects. So objects house memories. They're not just material goods. So this was a rug that we saw at the Mugrdechian carpet factory, or the rug factory. This stuck out to me because if you look really closely, there's a tear in the rug. So that tear was actually, there's a story to this. So there was a mother during the genocide. She thought she was going to lose her daughters, and so what she did is tore the rug in half and gave one half to one daughter and the other half to another daughter. Well, the mother passed away. She died in the genocide, but both daughters survived. One ended up in Syria, and one ended up in New York. And the one in Syria happened to be visiting, I believe, a church in New York, and saw that the sister's portion of the rug that she donated to a church in New York. And so the sisters, decades later, were reunited. And so I thought that was really, I mean, that's miraculous. So that was a takeaway for me. But overall in the trip, I think I was just amazed again, right, how memory is preserved in objects, right? And when you understand that objects are not just objects, that there's memory and depth to them, I think it makes you realize how much was also lost, right, in Western Armenia and even now in Artsakh. So I think that's something, because I realized, you know, something happened here in Armenia. We have such a rich history with Christianity, right, even the genocide. But at the same time, something is happening in Armenia even right now. So that was a big takeaway for me. Thank you.
Okay, our next student that I'm going to invite up is Christine Pambukian. Christine is graduating this semester from Fresno State. She is a nursing student. So come on up, Christine.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Right into the mic. You gotta speak right into
Can you hear me?
Speak louder.
Okay. So because it was my second time in Armenia, I decided to compare what I saw in 2018 versus what we saw in 2023. So I noticed that Armenia continues to be a great place for hospitality, food, and rich history. I noticed a significant increase in tourism and better paved roads towards our beautiful historic monuments, monasteries, fortresses, and churches. I also noticed better and cleaner toilets, even though our group did see a few questionable options outside of Yerevan. And I also noticed that there's a better waste removal system now in Armenia. It's a lot more sanitary, and there's a lot less trash around. And then I noticed more regulation in cafes and restaurants, but that unfortunately meant that I wasn't able to go to the cafes that I used to go to in 2018. And then one sad thing I noticed was that there was less optimism in the youth from when they had excitement after the Velvet Revolution in 2018 to after the 2020 war. But in other words, despite the hardships Armenia faced during the 2020 war, Armenia continues to innovate, progress, and improve, and I hope that despite the current political climate, that all Armenians outside or within Armenia continue to persevere and innovate, as I noticed within the 5 years. Thank you.
So some of our students are not going to be speaking, but I want to introduce all of them, and I'll do that as we go through. But I want to introduce Caleb. Would you stand up too, Caleb? Caleb Mendez is a biology major, just graduated and is pursuing his work in pharmacy. Is that right? Yeah, pharmacy. And I have to say it, but Caleb and Christine were in Armenia together. They're friends. Turned out they were more than friends because it turned out that they got engaged in Armenia. So let's give a round of applause. So our next speaker is going to be Dustin Vartanian. Dustin graduated from Fresno State. He was a business major, an Armenian studies minor, and he is now teaching in the Visalia School District, and he's going to give his reflections on Armenia.
Thank you. First, I'd just like to say this really was the best trip I've ever been on, one of the best experiences of my life. So I just want to say thank you to Professor Barlow again for letting me come. And for our whole group, we had a great group. We had so many moments of laughter and memories we'll never forget. And especially my roommates, Jonathan and Michael. Michael's not here. Every night, after the end of each day, we would just talk ourselves to sleep about all the things that we saw because we were just so into everything. I also learned how big of an appetite Jonathan and Michael had too. His breakfast buffet plates were impressive, and I'd never seen anyone before Michael go and eat a chicken shawarma at 6 a.m. before he did that as well. Before the trip, one of my main things I was curious about was the language in Armenia. I took 3 language classes here at Fresno State, and a big goal of mine was just I really wanted to speak to someone in Armenian. Just anybody in Armenia, to speak Armenian with them would be something really, really cool. And I know it would be difficult. I know the dialect is much different there, but that was just one goal of mine. And one, I guess, funny story I have is when we first got off the airplane and we're going through customs, and I was like, all right, I'm going to speak to the first person I see, I'm going to speak to them in Armenian. And so we're in lines, we're going through customs, I go to my window and my guy, so I say, pretty energetically, Pare vinchbesek. The guy just kind of takes my passport, looks at me and goes, you have Armenian last name. Yes, what is your first name? And that was it. I was like, that's it? So I was kind of worried that I wouldn't be able to talk to anybody, but I ended up doing a few people despite the challenges. I loved speaking, or at least trying. In my picture here, just standing here and thinking there's 1 million Armenians in this city you can have a chance to talk to. So I really enjoyed that. Switch it. Also, another thought of mine before the trip was just how would Armenia feel? Because you go to so many different places and you feel like such an outsider. Sometimes, you just feel like a, American tourist just walking around. But there's also those times where it feels just like home, especially the church. When just going and participating in the Balavak, it's like, wow, it feels just like home because we're, used to hearing this here at church as well. The Armenian church has always been an important part of my life. And so hearing that and being a part of that really made it feel like home. In this picture here, I took, whenever we had any opportunity to take a picture with any alphabet letters, I took one with the Dion here, which is the D in Armenian, and I should have added this, but I always took one with the D and also the P because I have an Armenian name called Poshi, which means dust or dirt. So I always had to do it 2 times, always with the D and with the P as well. So again, this really was such a great trip. I thought that was the coolest picture I took. It just looked so cool. Just all the countryside was so beautiful as well. And I just really can't wait to go back again, and I hope it is soon. So thank you.
Thank you, Dustin. Our next speaker is going to be Armenia Summer. Ariana graduated from Fresno State in speech pathology. It's speech pathology. She is now a graduate student and is pursuing a master's degree in the same field. So, Ariana.
this trip, people would ask me, what are you doing this summer? And I always said, well, I'm gonna work and I'm gonna go to Armenia, and then I'm gonna come back and do more work and then get ready for school again. And when I got back from Armenia, that story changed. When people would ask, what did you do this summer? I said, I went to Armenia and let me tell you all about it. And I had a total change of heart after the trip. And I know a lot of people have that same change of heart. This is actually my favorite picture that I took in Armenia. And it was one of the first days. This is the monastery of Mosavan. And before this trip, often, we pray before a trip. We say, God, keep us safe, keep us healthy, keep us happy. And in that prayer, I also asked God to reveal himself in this trip for me. And this is the moment where I felt as if he revealed himself. And this was just a really special moment. And there were also a lot of kids at this monastery, just behind where this picture was taken, a lot of high school kids getting ready for their prom, their graduation. And so life there in their school is not so different as what we have here. This was another one. This is the monastery of Hakhpat. And right under this cliff, actually, I think it's really funny, we all had a laugh. There was a home built in the cliff, and there's a car parked like on the patio on the cliff. Nobody knows how it got there or how it got off, but that was just a sweet laugh that I had in this place, and another place where I felt like God had revealed himself to me. This is in the same place Dustin showed his D letter, and this is the monastery, or the church of Mesrod Mashdod, and where he's buried. And I like this picture. I like the A for my name because we did the art at the manuscript library and got to practice writing our names in those special letters. And I just couldn't imagine how much work went into this one. And it just was so beautiful. And I really couldn't find it for a while because I was so just in awe of all the beautiful artwork that was around me. And this, I know Dustin showed a picture of the Odzun church, the pink-ish church that you saw. This was the other way when we were leaving. So this is my back is facing the church. And these were the clouds and the sun. And this was one of our last days. But this picture was also really special. I like to look at these pictures a lot because it reminds me of that really happy feeling that I had when I was there. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Ariana. Our next student is going to be Charles Garabedian. He's an agricultural business major at Fresno State, and he's also minoring in Armenian studies. Charles?
Hello everyone, I'd just like to say thank you all for coming out here, and I didn't post any pictures on this PowerPoint, but I did take a lot of pictures, about 800 pictures on like the camera, and maybe another 100 or so on my phone. So I will pictures you guys are ever interested. I don't mind giving my email, and then I can just send you the whole hard drive of it. But with that said though, everything was just fantastic. I mean, I would say like the couple things that struck out to me were like going to the northern and southern mountain ranges where some of the monasteries were. In a way, they remind me of here in the valley, but at the same time, you could tell it was different and just very interesting. And I just like being in the outdoors, so that's what also contributed to me always enjoying that. And I would say too, and I speak for everyone about this, and no one has mentioned it, I don't think, but the food was also, just spot on. It's a lot different. Armenian food is good, as we know, as always, but I mean, over there, it's just, it just touches your heart more, I feel like, you know. And, going through the city and even going to Gyumri, I especially like Gyumri as well. It was like Yerevan, but maybe like its little brother. But in a good way, of course. Of course, we saw some of the buildings that were affected, unfortunately, by the 1988 earthquake. But as we walked around the city, we could see how they've done improvements. You know, they're doing all that they can, and it really made me kind of reflect of how you know, the hardships of what our people in the homeland go through, and kind of tells you not to take life for granted and whatnot. And all in all, though, it was just a fantastic trip. I really recommend any of you that haven't been to take a trip over there, and I would definitely go again. And I know some of my fellow classmates would go again as well. So thank you.
I have to tell you a few more secrets. So Charles was one of our students who, you know, I kind of have preconceptions about our students and how they're going to do, right? Because you don't really know how it is to travel with someone and what it's going to be like. I have to say that, in my opinion, he was one of the people that actually just fit in perfectly in Armenia. In other words, he was not afraid of anything. He didn't. The language was not an obstacle. He was exchanging. You know, he was buying and selling things at the probably selling things at the vernissage. He was the one that discovered. He was the one that discovered that you can get takeout food in Armenia at 4 o'clock in the morning from the Black Angus hamburger joint. So you know, it's how you approach things, right? And I have to say that each of the students had a really good attitude in traveling to Armenia, and notwithstanding any of the other groups that I went with, because I like all of the groups, but this group really fit together well. I mean, they went together places, they did things together, and I think that also is part of that experience of shared memories that was mentioned, and just all of that. But it was fun and very memorable with Eddie. We developed a new nickname for him also. He's also our Chucky, so we call him Chucky. We have a couple of other students that are here that are not speaking. I saw Karin. Where's Karin? Yeah, Karin Der Mugrdechian. You want to stand up for a moment? Karin Der Mugrdechian. Karin is biochemistry or major, and she's getting her minor in Armenian studies, and she's also in the executive of the Armenian Students Organization. Just very active in our group, so she was wonderful on the trip. Thank you. And then also we have Krista Eritzian, who also is here. Krista is also a speech, stand up at least. She's also a speech pathology major, and will be graduating this year and got her minor in Armenian studies, so also want to recognize her. Is there anyone else that I didn't recognize from the group that's here? Okay, so our final speaker tonight will be Jonathan Chardukian. Jonathan is majoring in biology, minoring in Armenian studies, and he has the distinction of having a mother who I took to Armenia in 1988, right?
Yeah.
Darlene, yes. 35 years ago, I took his mom to Armenia, so that's, and I've taken both of his sisters, so it's the whole family. Come on up, Jonathan.
I've got something written on my phone right here. So, perhaps the aspect of Armenia that stuck with me the most was the sheer natural beauty of the country. When driving through the Armenian countryside, I could not help but open my window, stick my phone out and film. I'm sure much to the annoyance of my classmates who were sitting next to me. Of course, the natural beauty can be found anywhere, but none of it can have the same significance as it had in Armenia because it's Armenia. Nowhere else can have the same historical, cultural, and spiritual significance that Armenia has for me as an Armenian American. Seeing the vast open landscapes of green rolling hills, this right here, this is across from Norabank actually. But yeah, stuff like this is Mount Alagats. When we first stopped by the letters on the side of the highway, I speed walked to a hill so I can get a good picture. But yeah, seeing the vast open landscapes of green rolling hills shadowed by the mountains and mesas, and knowing that our people, Armenians, have inhabited this area and its surrounding areas for thousands of years just made every aspect of this trip much more special and impactful for me. It was interesting to see how much everything varied. You see, I've got the same picture that Ariana had. See, that's a good view right there. but everything varied so much within such a relatively small geographical area. It was interesting to see, like when we were going to Dilijan, we were like in an area where Lake Sevan was, and then we go through a tunnel for like 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden we go from cleared grassland to just like a dense, like jungle-looking type area, and it was crazy. Let's see, and it was very fun. There's a lot of plants in Armenia that are similar to what we have in America, in the American West and California. There were things like yarrow, silver sage, and I got to chomp some of those plants. But overall, it was an amazing trip for me. I plan on going back again. Let's see what I have here. When Dr. Hudag Papazian spoke to us, he emphasized the importance of the Armenian people having a real, tangible homeland, which is what we have. And even though I am descendant of Western Armenians, it's important to me that we do have this homeland where our culture is safe to thrive. And then I also have videos here.
Yeah, great, just click on it. You know how to do it.
This was on the way back from Odzum. I stuck my phone out the window. The river gorge, and it's beautiful. This is on the way to Halkot and Sanahin. We were passing through, they were Russian villages, you said?
Yeah. Malakan.
And then finally, we had, this was right behind Garni, the Garni temple. There's a massive river gorge right behind Garni. And that's that.
Well, that's our presentation for this evening. I want to give a special thanks to the students who spoke very articulately and expressing their feelings. And I think that it is worthwhile for you to talk to them outside.